Welcome back, everyone. This is another post-commentary of a replay that I played in a Team Island friendly. It is a match against Aranray, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, I'm not very good at Spanish, of POKÉMON Andalucía. Now, in this match, I went straight into it, it was just a very quick organised match. He said when he got to play, we played it. And coming into it, I saw team preview, and looking at it, I was like, this team looks very familiar. And upon analysing it, I realised that it was the same team that Tobias Kosicki used in Malmo to win, except he had a possibly G-Max Urshifu over the G-Max Butterfree, sorry. So he had the option here in that circumstance, a G-Max all three of his 6 Pokemon, that being Venusaur, Hatterene, and his Urshifu. So I had to try and predict which one he would bring, and of those ones that he brought, which one would Dynamax. I was most scared of the Venusaur, however, because it had access to moves such as Earth Power, Frenzy Plant, Leaf Storm, Energy Ball, Sludge Bomb, that were super effective against all of my Pokemon. And as well as Venusaur's Chlorophyll, Torkoal on its Sun could slow down my X-Drill and deal big damage if in Trick Room. And my team didn't really have a good Trick Room matchup. So overall, I actually felt that the safest way to deal with this Trick Room was to go into it with the lead that would probably lose to Trick Room. That being, it gave me a strong, fast start, and I could easily pivot between Hippowdon, I don't know how to pronounce that, and whatever Pokemon I had in the back to make sure Sand was up, and maybe I had Intimidates going off, I had Grassy Terrain up, and all different things to hinder my opponent's side of the field. For example, Sand would stop Venusaur, and Grassy Terrain would stop the power from Hatterene and Didi. Now, going to turn 1, we see that my opponent leads the Hatterene and Didi, and I do go with the X-Drill and the Hippowdon. Now, this is probably the easiest of the G-Max possibilities I could deal with, because I knew that either if he followed Mead, I could have gone for Max Quake to get a special defense boost. If I'd got the Max Steel Spike, it's still quite a strong Max Steel Spike into a non-Dynamax and Didi, and I'd got the setup for Body Press later on, which might not have done much to most of his team, because I can see that Rhyperior is the only one really taking much damage from that, maybe Torkoal as well. The others resist or have neutral damage. So I was thinking, will Indeedee follow me? And if I did, would either of those boosts benefit me? And I also thought that if he went for a G-Max with the bulk that I got, I could stall it out. Whereas if you're into Trick Room, it still wasn't really too big of an issue, because I did have Hippowdon ready to just set up and spam Slack Off, Stockpile, and maybe a couple of Fissures and Body Press down the line. However, I was still at the risk of like crits and powerful combos such as like Expanding Force and Psychic Terrain. So we see that I'd get a Dynamax off here, and he does go for the Follow Me as predicted, so the Max Quake was a good play, and it gives me that plus defense plus a stockpile, so I'm at plus 2 defense here, taking not much, and Trick Room does, for my luck, go up. Now coming into turn 2 here, we do see that the Hatterene did decide to G-Max and get a Helping Hand boost. This wasn't a problem until I saw that Helping Hand, because I was scared what could happen. Could he get a crit Helping Hand? Could he get a high roll of Helping Hand? Because I hadn't really faced this matchup very much with this team, because I hadn't seen Hat Didi for a very long time. Max Mindstorm, as we see, does do a large amount to Hippowdon, and we do live. I go for the smart play of going for Slack Off, knowing that I'm not going to be able to survive on that low if I just go for Stockpile or try and Body Press, because I'm not doing much damage and I can't risk losing Hippowdon in this matchup. And as you do see here as well, I go for the Max Steel Spike, but it does reveal the Babiri Berry on Hatterene, which means that I'm not doing as much damage, and I am but I'm still getting the defense boosts, which makes it a bit hard as well, because then he could go for a high roll on the Expanding Force / Max Mindstorm play, and that could really hinder me, because he could get Sun in, he can get Venusaur out of Trick Room, he could just sweep. The play I would recommend from my opponent here is it could have gone for Max Spike, because if they had done, they could have confused both my Pokemon, and I had a chance of not recovering, not getting up the stockpile, and I could have attacked maybe with Extra Duel, which would have put them in a much fairer advantage, because they could have just hoped that I got the confusion roll and hoped that they got a high roll on that damage. Now, going to turn 2, I kind of had to go for the same play to try and guarantee gets rid of my Pokemon with a max Fire or a max Psychic. So I thought I'll just play it safe and go for the same play again myself. So I went with the Recover, or Slack Off in this case, with my Hippowdon, and I thought, max Steel Spike will probably get knockout, he's not going to follow me. So I do get it right, he does go for the Helping Hand, max Mindstorm, I do just live, and the Slack Off does put me in max health, and we get the max Steel Spike, which does grab us a knockout. Now, this passive play from my opponent really did hinder them, because they could have got a bigger damage with Hippowdon, got a knockout, but they decided to try and be a big punch into it with the max move. And with that boost as well, it sets me up later for the body press late game, where I can just stall and spam body press because I'm really bulky, and with a high special defense, that already has, I can really put that pressure on. And going to turn 4, we do see that my Dynamax ends, but he brings in Torkoal, which really is an issue for me because my Sand is gone, so his Fire type attacks are going to be stronger. And this doesn't really matter though, because I still have my Focus Sash intact, and Hippowdon was at +2, so unless he got a really high roll or crit, I wasn't really scared. And the burn was also scary because it would have reduced the damage from my attacks, and it also made that my Sash, if it did get broken, would then be fully broken. But as you say, fearing the Follow Me Heat Wave, I just go for a safe play of Stockpile and Rock Slide, I believe. Yeah, because what that did is it covered my options for if he went for Follow Me, so I wasn't high horsepowering into a dead slot, and I could have got some big damage up over the crit, and it just covers everything. Of course, the Stockpile maybe could have been better as a Slack Off, because I could have got that HP back, but I'm sitting quite comfortably now at +3 special defense in front of a Torkoal, even if it is in Sun with Charcoal. And luckily, Extra didn't get burned as well, because if he did get burned, that damage, that even though it was quite little, would have done even less, so it would have put me in a lower area of what to work with. And with Hippowdon at +3 and the Torkoal at low health, I felt really safe because Eruption wasn't doing much, and it's only access to the Heat Wave when you burn in Jealousy, but the fear was there that if he did a burn in Jealousy Heat Wave, he had the chance to burn. Now, knowing that after this it was the last turn in Trick Room, I kind of felt Extra was dead weight. If he went last, which he was going to do, he was going to die to whatever move was thrown at him, and all I could really think of is chip damage. So I decided to just keep my Pokemon back healthy, not switch, nothing. Similarly, at +3, I still had Hippowdon at. I was really not taking much damage from anything, so I played it very passively and thought that instead of attacking, I decided to play a less offensive role. So he goes to the Helping Hand and Heat Wave. Luckily, he misses my Extra Duel, and I survive and get the Slack off. And the Rock Slide only just misses the KO on the DD and puts Torkoal at even lower health. So because of that, Trick Room gets to end, and I still have Extra Duel quite safe. So I wanted to try and play on this. My only play really was to dodge the Follow Me again. So I had to go for Rock Slide, which also helped me with a chance of flinching, and it also helped me with a chance of having a secondary win con if need be. So from here on out, I really did feel safe spamming Rock Slide. And knowing that Rock Slide was a 3-1 package, KO, flinch or miss, I covered my bases, made sure Hippowdon was max HP by going for another Slack Off. So we do see the Follow Me here, and the Rock Slide does get the knockout on both of them. It's really good, and Hippowdon does get to go back to max HP with the +2 special defense, +3 sorry, and +2 defense, meaning that whatever he brought in the back wasn't really doing much to me. And we see after this, my opponent does forfeit for the end of the battle. This is a very safe choice in my opinion because it preserves information at the back, because if he had Venusaur we could have found out if it was Frenzy Plant, if he was Earth Power, if he was Leaf Storm, Energy Ball, if he had Sleep Powder, if he didn't Sleep Powder, there's all different possibilities. After game 1, I felt pretty safe going with Sanding again, as it could deal with most of my opponent's possible leads as before. Although my biggest fear was still something like Venusaur Hatterene or Venusaur Torkoal, because Sleep plus Sun or Sleep plus Trick Room Setup was hard to deal with if he pulled it off without the miss. Rillaboom was also a very notable option for this matchup, and I felt that it was best to bring him in the back, because I could reset terrain and could stop Sleep or TR by switching it in, and also a very good matchup against Rhyperior with the Grassy Glide in terrain and the Stab. And if, like me, he led the same, he could have adapted and gone for more offensively oriented play, such as going for the Helping Hand straight away, or going for a double attack with Expanding Force, which meant Hit Down would have gone, and I didn't have any Trick Room matchup. So as we see, I do decide to go for the same, and he does lead with the Venusaur like I predicted, but not without the Hatterene, and he brings the Venusaur instead. No, sorry, the Indeedee. But this is slightly harder to deal with, because if he switched right and got Torkoal in, if he followed me Sleep Powder, like something was gonna be put to sleep pretty much, so I couldn't really risk it. I couldn't have gone for Rock Slide because I had to rely on flinches, but then again if I went for Rock Slide and he got the switch in I would have been slower, so he's still gonna put me to sleep. So to keep all my bases covered, I thought I'd go for a passive play of preserving my sand. So I get the prediction right, he does switch in the Torkoal, and luckily because I'm slow I switch out second, so I do get Rillaboom in, and I just go for a passive play again and predict Dynamax, and I go for a Max Guard. This really helps as well because I have Fake Out Pressure now, and I do predict right, and he does go for a Grass move into the Hippowdon slot. But sadly, it still does get the residual damage onto my Excadrill because of the effect of G-Max Vine Lash. So although I made this passive play, it did really hinder me back because I didn't think that would happen. I thought maybe he'd go for a Sleep Powder, that's why I was protecting. So I had to think now. Would he bring in Indeedee? Would he not? Would I have to Fake Out? Would I have to switch? I had no idea what to expect. Going into the next turn, I just happily switched back into Hippowdon to get the sand back up to make me faster, and he also switched in second terrain before he's putting a Fake Out, so I get the Max Quake into what was going to be a Torkoal, but it doesn't matter because I still get the special defense boost. And this also meant that whatever I was throwing at Venusaur would probably not do as much damage. And luckily, I do get another predict very well because he goes for a Max Ooze, which yeah, it does push special attack, but look how well I take that. See, it does if we look in the chat, which you can't see. It does just around 17%, which that just shows how bulky Hippowdon is. So because of that switch, I maybe predicting me to bring sand in, so he's probably going to bring some back in the turn after. But I really wasn't bothered this because at +1 special defense I was probably taking anything. Maybe not like a Frenzy Plant Max Vine Lash, and I had no fear of Sleep because of course he'd have to switch out and wasting a special attack boost, wasting his Dynamax turns, even though they were dwindling already. My opponent, however, in this state, does go and reveal the switch in, and he does reveal the Max Quake, which I take fairly well. I didn't expect myself to take it, I didn't know he had it. Well, most Venusaur have it these days for like Duraludon and Incineroar and different matchups, but I'm surprised I took it again with that, even with that +1 special defense. And because of this, I was able to call that bluff and just get my sand back up rather than the switch, preserving the +1 special defense, and I can just heal up Hippowdon without any repercussions besides the G-Max Vine Lash. And with sand up now and Dynamax yet to end for both mine and my opponent's Pokemon, it was easy to say that there was no free switch my opponent, because if he switched in that Torkoal, there's gonna be a lot of damage going to that slot, maybe a Rock Slide or an Earth Power, high horsepower, and Hippowdon could have just gone for the boosts to try and take out the Venusaur. So everything does go in Dynamax, and trying to preserve the weather again, which I felt quite foolish. The opponent switches and I just get a free Rock Slide off, and I hope to flinch, which I do get. Now that flinch is very crucial for me, because it helps me complete my plan of every game I play at this team, pretty much, of getting Hippowdon set up as much as possible. So I could get to the +2 here. I felt really safe in front of Venusaur at +2, unless he had the aforementioned Frenzy Plant or Leaf Storm, and or if he got Rillaboom in somehow, where he knocked out Excadrill, or maybe he had Roar or something in the back, or like some sort of switching move, which I can't really see from these two Pokemon, but that was something I did have to think about during the game. So, in sorrow of that, I do lose Excadrill Divine Lash, so I am forced to bring in my Rillaboom, because Togekiss with in the back was threatened by a Sludge Bomb if you brought Sun back, and I could fake out with this and make sure something was gone. And because of that, my plan here was to make sure that something was living all the time, looping my fake outs and my Grassy Glides, and making sure that Hippowdon was at +3 special defense still. And with the accompanying defense boost as well, I could very easily, take a couple of knockouts with Body Press, or nonetheless do as much damage as possible. Although stupidly in this turn, I go for more offensive play and double into Venusaur with Fake Out and Body Press, which I really thought would knock out, but then I stupidly forgot how poison resisted fighting types. It still does quite a lot of damage, which is really good. But going to later turns, you'll see that play probably should have been the boost, because like I said, I had to force myself into getting the grassy terrain set up. And even though I did make that silly mistake, from here on out, my gameplay was to have my opponents see Hippowdon as a bigger threat, and have them ignore Rillaboom. So if I could get to ignore Rillaboom just had Grassy Glide everything, and Togekiss can come in safely, and as long as it wasn't Rhyperior in the back, I had a good deal of winning. And at 4-3 down as well, I had less potential of switching, so I couldn't afford to waste debuffs on my Hippowdon. I had no reason to bring Sand back, and I had no reason to lose my boost, so I felt no point. And as much as I want to focus Venusaur, we do see that after all the chip damage and the healing from Grassy Terrain, that indeed he goes for a Follow Me. Now, this does really hinder my plan, because Venusaur was my target. I had to get rid of Venusaur so that Hippowdon was safe, and I wanted to preserve all that offensive pressure. But sadly, even though I do kill the Indeedee, I have to have the trade-off of losing Hippowdon, but to my luck as well, with Sand and Lightfall damage and all that, my opponent's Venusaur does go down. And that means a special attacking prowess has gone from the field, so we get to see what's in the back, which we know is the Torkoal, plus maybe Rhyperior, or the Urshifu, or maybe the Hatterene. We don't know yet. Well, I do, but at the time I was mostly fearing something maybe like Hatterene, because it could get big damage off without any reconcile. So of course, once that dies, I get my healing back, and we get to see it's a Torkoal and the Urshifu in the back, and I get to bring in my own Togekiss. I say my own, but he'd have a Togekiss. So my best play here was to use the Stab and Grassy Terrain boost from the Grassy Glide to try and get a knockout on Torkoal, because if once that was gone, I was kind of scot-free to like Dancing Gleam and get the 4 times effective damage off on the Urshifu. And like this call came down to a roll, because I didn't know if the fire typing would help him live. I didn't know if I get flinched. I didn't know what would happen. So it all came down to who got the better hacks and who got the higher rolls. So I go for it, and luckily I do get that higher roll. But as we see, my opponent does have Iron Head, and it does also rip my Berry Berry, so I still have the game free, he didn't know that, and I do flinch, which is very unfortunate for me. But even though that happened, I still did have the taste of victory on my tongue. I still did know I could win. Of course, he had to get like Rock Slide flinches, Iron Head flinches, like maybe a crit area laser, all that stuff to try and win. And the chances of that happening in succession were very, very low. So I really had nothing to lose. So just for the guarantee, I went for a Galati Glider that's really strong damage, about 50%. Iron Head for my opponent, luckily for me, doesn't flinch, and then Dazzling Gleam for that 4 type effectiveness gets the KO, and I beat my opponent. So I'd like to say a very big good game to Aranray, as seen here. He's called Juan313. He is a player participating under Andalucía. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce that because I've never been to Spain. They are a small region within Spain who try their best to encourage players to play more VGC, because a lot of regions in Spain like to represent themselves. It's a lot of political stuff I don't want to get into, but you have things like Madrid, Catalan, all those places representing themselves. You can go follow with Andalucía and Aranray on Twitter, I'll link them below. Don't pester them, but just, say good games against Casher Boy, or like maybe ask them about their teams, ask about info. But nonetheless, it was a good battle. GG's against my opponent. I hope to maybe battle some more of you guys one day. But until then, both to Pokemon Andalucía and to the people who are watching this video, I'd like to say goodbye and probably see you at some point in the future.
Benjamin's in my pocket. I traded my truth for some robins, and he's playing Batman. Freddy's gonna rob him. Yeah, I got the Glock in my robbery. 17 shots, no 38. Yeah, I got the Glock in my robbery. 17 shots, no 38. Yeah, she's fine. Wondering will she be mine? Walk past